I think I want to agree with my panelist here, and also weigh in and say that it is sad that they are always beneficiary. You know, when it comes to a rotten status quo in our country, they're always beneficiaries. I think we've seen even in situations where citizens are affected, you know, take for instance even during COVID, and someone is taking advantage of that. We're talking about food insecurity in this country, and we are still reading about such stories where people want to benefit out of the pain that Kenyans are experiencing. And for me, I think it's the fact that even when we discover such situations, is that we never seal the loopholes, because this is not the first time we're hearing about scandals when it comes to maize. You know, this is not the first time we're hearing deals when it comes to, you know, food in this country, food supply in this country, and not only maize, you know. And it's the fact that over and over we don't seal those loopholes, because right now maybe you suspend someone, but how are we sealing these loopholes to ensure that we don't find ourselves here again and then we purport to be shocked about what is happening, but behind the scenes we know that even leaders want to also reap you know, the resources they spent during campaigns from such deals. So that's at least what we know so far, and we'll continue to monitor that as well. So let's move forward. What else do we have? Very quickly, Farm snubs members summons in 6 billion telecom buyout probe. That's the owner of the farm that received 6 billion in the telecom deal yesterday failed to appear before members of parliament, even as the lawmakers heard about an ultimatum to seal the transaction in the last days of President Uhuru Kenyatta's government. During the hearing, it was revealed that Telecom Kenya majority owners had given the government an ultimatum to buy back the telco by 31st of July last year, after which they threatened to sell their shares in the struggling company to other potential buyers. You can see a picture there of the former National Treasury and Planning Cabinet Secretary Okoye Tani, who told the members of parliament that the UK-based private equity from Helios Investment, which had a 60% stake in Telcom, had from as early as the August 2021 informed Treasury of its decision to offload its stake in the company. This is another story that we're also be following up on the same. In harsh north, water and food rare as gold, and women and girls are bearing the brunt of the scarcity as a drought continues to linger. And there's a story there by Amina Wako and Waweru Wairimu. You know, we can see that they're talking about just taking case by case of some of the women. There's the stories of the women that were bearing the brunt of the drought in those parts of the country. Halima Boru, not her real name, was in January forced to drop out of primary school in Modogashe town in Sericho Ward, that's in Isiolo County, due to chores at home that increased after her father left to look for a job following the loss of his livestock in drought. And the story goes on to just give you an idea of how the situation really looks like in the ground. It is not a very good picture, and a lot needs to be done to be able to help those people who've been highly affected by drought in this part of the country. And to get that full report there, this is on the 10th page of the Daily Nation. Let me see what else we have as we move forward. Finally, on the Daily Nation, death of witness, Heart's case of a kasha dealer, and that's the demise of Mr. Kolia, was found dead in a Caribbean hotel, remains a mystery to his family up until then. We've been following up on this case for quite some time, so you can be able to read that on the 12th page of the Daily Nation. And this is where we wind up on the Daily Nation Business Daily. CBK whips banks to unlock dollars after Ruto warning. The Central Bank of Kenya has spooked banks with a new foreign exchange code that comes with threats of punitive fines and license suspension for offenders. On a day, President William Ruto warned traders holding dollars to expect losses in a few weeks. And the foreign exchange code, among others, prohibits banks from engaging in trading practices, quoting prices, or making transactions with the intention of manipulating price movements or disrupting the functioning of the market. Why Kenya's maize import plan is facing headwinds, you can also get that on page 4 of the Business Daily. And the issue of the privatization bill, fight heads to court.
A senator now has moved to court to challenge the push by President William Ruto to sell parastatals without the approval of Parliament, as opposition members of Parliament prepare to fight the law change in the House, another big issue that is currently happening. And Balubai buys 181 million extra stake in Cooperative Bank. On Taifa Leo, mali ya umma kupigwa mnada. You can see there Opiyo Wandayi. Serikali sasa inapanga kuuza kampuni, baadhi ya vyuo vikuu na mashirika ya umma ambayo yamekuwa yakipata hasara bila idhini ya wabunge, ikiwa mswada wa ubinafsishaji wa mwaka 2013 utapitishwa na bunge. Waziri wa fedha atapata mamlaka ya kuuza mashirika na kampuni za umma bila kuulizwa maswali yoyote. That story is on the second page of the Taifa Leo paper, and it's all about the privatization bill. What does it mean for the country? On the East African, we still have the same, because this is a publication that is done weekly. So we still have this. We covered it yesterday on issues of the 40 million COVID vaccines, which are now going to waste in some parts of the continent. All right, and on the Standard, very quickly, this is what we have. Ruto dilemma in handling Raila. I think we've seen that on the Daily Nation as well, quite heavily. And tough choices. President William Ruto has a decision to make on how to handle the ongoing protests against his government. The options he has on the table means he walks on a tightrope as the opposition readies to go to the streets again next week. Not once, but twice. But what do we have? When they say between a rock and a hard place, this is what we have. Arrest and prosecute or exile. Members of President's party say the opposition leader should be arrested and prosecuted for demonstrations, but his supporters say it is a right in the Constitution. And others say, ignore him. The president can look the other way and let Raila continue with his demonstrations, but business leaders say the impact on the economy is grave and is not, and is a big slap, and is not, you know, it's not a step in the protest. Or dialogue. Well, we've seen others calling the Azimio leader to the table in what they're saying, that there should be some sort of dialogue between the two leaders, but that has also, that's quite a catch-22 issue. Handshake and unity government. The president can invite the opposition leader to the government, but creating space for Raila and his team would mean edging out some Kenya Kwanza stalwarts, causing infighting. But we've already heard the president categorically say that he does not want another handshake reminiscent of exactly what happened in the previous administration. All right, so this is where we wind up on the paper. Let me just take us back to the Daily Nation and leave it here for now. All right, so what we're going to do is have a look at least what some of the other Kenyans say. What are some of the concerns that Kenyans have with regard to what is happening in the country, specifically on this issue of the cost of living, because we've seen the maandamano happening and more that have been called for in the coming weeks. Is it genuine, at least from the politicians? Joseph said it is good, but he, you know, pokes holes on the genuineness of the politicians calling for protests on the issue of the cost of living, among other things. So we begin with that is Jesse Chenge from Bungoma. What do the residents of Bungoma have to say with regards to what the aspirations are for a better Kenya and some of their concerns?
A very good morning, Zainab. We are live in Bungoma town. I just want to speak to a few Wanjiku to actually express their views on what do Wanjiku want. One of the members here from Bungoma County. Ndugu, utajitambulisha kwa majina, tueleze what do Wanjiku want?
Kwa ujumla nitaweza kusema kwamba sisi kama Wakenya ambao tunakuwa referred kama Wanjiku, tuna matarajio mengi. Wanjiku anataka unga irudi chini. Wanjiku anataka maisha ambayo yako juu sahi yarudi chini. Kwa sababu Wakenya wengi ambao ni Wanjiku, pesa ambazo wanapata ni kama tuseme wana live under $1 in a day. na $1 in a day kwa Wanjiku ni pesa ni kidogo sana. So ile kitu Wanjiku anataka ni maisha yarudi chini, bei ya bidhaa zirudi chini, ndiposa Wanjiku aone kwamba serikali inamsaidia. Licha ya hayo, Wanjiku bado atakuwa anapiga tu serikali vita usiku na mchana. Lakini kulingana na namna na jinsi ambapo serikali ilipokuwa inapeana zile promises wakati wa siasa, ilipatia Wanjiku moral na kumpatia motisha kwamba wakati serikali itaingia tu hivi, kila kitu kitakuwa jinsi na namna Wanjiku anataka. Lakini yote tisa, tuseme kwamba serikali ambayo ilichaguliwa na Wanjiku imefail Wanjiku kwa njia moja ama nyingine.
Wanjiku anataka ugali kwa meza, na ugali kwa meza Wanjiku kupata lazima akimudu kugaramia. Saisi korokoro ya mahindi inauzwa shilingi 230. Wanjiku hawezi kujimudu kuweka ugali kwa meza.
Vitu ya CPC imetuletea shida kwa sababu pesa tumekaramika vitu mingi ambazo bado tunaendelea kukaramika, na rais alikuwa ametuambia akishaingia kwa kiti atatoa hizo vitu na tutakuwa vizuri na watoto wafanye tu 8 ili tuendelee maisha mzuri kama vitu itateremka.
Gharama ya maisha imeenda juu kwa sababu ya bei ya mafuta, kwa sababu usafiri sasa ikakuwa juu na kila kitu kinasafiri ikatumia mafuta. Gharama ya mafuta iko juu, gharama ya stima iko juu, na gharama ya chakula kila ambacho tunaweka katika meza yote gharama iko juu. Sisi hapa ni watu kutegemea ugali. Ugali bei imetushinda. Na sisi tena ni wakulima wa ugali yenyewe na hatumwezi bei yake. Gharama ya kupeleka watoto shule imekuwa juu. Gharama ya kupata huduma katika hospitali imekuwa juu. Sasa ukikuwa mgonjwa ukienda hospitali unajua hatima yako ya kifo imefika, kwa maana hautaweza kumudu gharama ya hospitali. Sasa serikali lazima ihakikishe ya kwamba gharama ya maisha imepunguzwa, imefika kiwango kile mwananchi anaweza kumudu ili nchi iendelee mbele.
Zainab, those are a few sentiments from Mwananchi from this county of Bungoma. They have raised so many questions that they want the government of Kenya to actually make sure that Wanjiku of the day can be able to benefit. Back to you in studio, Zainab.
All right, thanks, Jesse, who's just sampling some of the views from residents of Bungoma with regard to, you know, their concerns. I think we've all had. Ben, I'm going to give you an opportunity to make a comment on what we witnessed on Monday. I think Sammy and Joseph did make a comment on that, the protests that we witnessed in the country. At the heart of what the opposition says is the issue of the cost of living, which, from what we heard, at least from the residents there, that is a very big issue for them. The issue of gharama ya chakula, you know, the cost of living and these things. But there was a lot that happened. There was loss of life. A student at Maseno University died, lost his life, William Mayenga, and we saw, you know, there was looting and there was a lot that happened, and the ugly scenes that we witnessed, at least here in Nairobi and parts of Kisumu. What is your, you know, view on exactly what transpired?
So, Zainab, I first of all want to say that if you even remove, you know, the opposition leader, you know, from the center of what is happening when you talk about maandamano, you're left with the issues that, you know, they're discussing. Are they valid issue? You know, they are valid issues, you know. I was reading this story on The Nation in terms of what is happening in the north when it comes to just access to water.
Right.
And we are seeing how just lack of access to water is leading to children dropping out of school. How lack of access to water is connected to a hospital running well, you know, like literally. Yesterday in the news bulletin that you're running here at Nation, there were residents talking about how even some hospitals in the north are being shut down because, you know, they cannot operate well when you don't actually have water. What does that mean for residents who actually fall sick and can't access services? 28 million Kenyans in this country cannot access clean water. Water is such a basic commodity when you look at our constitution when it comes to Article 43. a basic commodity that is tied to so many other things, you know, when you can't even access clean water. Look at all the chronic diseases connected to just you not accessing clean water, and then you add on top of that you're not able to access you know, medical care because you can't even afford medical care. You know, 46% of Kenyans in this country, Kenyans spend about 46% of their earnings on food. 46% of their earnings on food. So how much
so
are
there's
you
no for saving?
Yeah, like how much are you remaining with,
right,
literally, to educate your child, to take care of yourself, to invest in your business? How much are you remaining with if 46% of whatever you're earning? So if someone is telling you that they can only make $1 a day, 46% of that is actually going to food. So how much are they even saving? There's nothing to even save. And that is at the core of even the hustlers that we've been talking about even during the campaign. So people are asking valid questions. People are showing up for very valid concerns. And it's important that the police facilitate that process when people want to protest in peace and just say, these are our concerns. Because honestly, Zainab, what is the big deal, you know, even with you as a president, just saying, it's okay, I'll wait for you to come, bring your petition. What is the big deal? You know, what is the big deal? Because then as a police, their role on that particular day was just to facilitate peaceful demonstration. We shouldn't have someone losing a life in this country because they're perhaps protesting about the high cost of living, a high cost of education. You had the other day, I think a few weeks ago, we were discussing how university fees are going to go up. How many people can even afford to pay for their kids to be in school in the first place? So people are coming out, whether they're young or old, with very valid concerns, and it's important for us to listen. The president is the symbol of unity in this country, you know, and his role, one of his roles is to promote diversity, is to promote unity. And I think it's such a time as this that we would love to see him exercise that role as envisioned in the Constitution of Kenya.
Right. Sammy, businesses also lost heavily, especially here in Nairobi. I remember walking in very early in the morning and everything was dead. Nairobi was a ghost town up until when the chaos began. Just how much, when you're talking about the economic cost of these protests? Well, the protests are good. Well, you know, arguably, from one end, the protests are good because it's giving people the voice to talk about issues of cost of living and all these things. But you also have small-scale traders, the hawkers who are also selling things. Were they affected? How, to what extent were they affected?
Zainab, when you look at the effects of the protest and everything, what happened on Monday, it boils down to, do we really need to go through this road again? Because you look at... But
then how do you create that balance? You want... These people are also suffering. They're making less than $1 a day or so, perhaps, if we can look at the statistics. But then again, the voice is there by going out to the streets, but they're also hurting when we do go to the streets. Where do you create that balance?
And I think that's where Joseph actually alluded to that. And is it, yes, we have genuine issues, and especially the cost of living is very high. But the modus operandi of the mode of operation of how we are tackling this issue is wanting. Because when you look at the cost, like for example, what happened on Monday, the deputy president talked about 2 billion shillings. I don't know how he came to that figure. But the amount of money that is lost and business that is lost and the credibility even of this economy, because the stability of the economy also brings investors in this country. When you look at the common Mwananchi, the issue that we are having is an issue of policy, and I'll tell you the reason why. And policy boils down even to leadership. The government, yes, has a role to cushion and to mitigate this situation. And when they get that role, or because that role is within their reach, what are they doing about it? Who are the leaders that you're bringing on board? Like, for example, we are talking about the subsidies. The subsidies, if they are taken advantage of by right leaders who are patriotic enough to cushion their people, it can cushion us as the government tries to build up policies that are going to cushion the common Mwananchi. That's number one. Number two, we are a government that is that spends more than it makes. We must cut our coat according, cut our clothes according to our size. We are heavy spenders. Like the other day when you look at the newspapers, I don't know how true that is, but there was an allocation of about 800 million to buy cars, you know, for some government officials. Is it a priority? So when you look at the priorities that you're bringing on board as a government, they are wanting, what is that vision that you needed to, you know, to come up with, or that vision that you had for Kenyans? Because right now what is supposed to be done is, can we be able to mitigate the issue on the cost of living, the unga, the petroleum? Some of these dynamics is the government coming and cushioning its citizenry, and also coming up with policy. And let me tell you something, Zainab. My colleague here, my panelist, has talked about like 46% of what Kenyans are making is going to go to food. When are you going to even pay taxes? And number two, you find that the government here is heavily taxing businesses. So look at what happens on Monday. Look at that concoction. Look at that cocktail of problems. The government should come up with priorities. What should they do first? Number one, cushion the citizenry, because they talked, when they were doing the campaigns, they say they are going to change. How are they going to change? When you talk about the subsidiaries, they should come back with those subsidiaries, and they should cushion, because the subsidiaries were benefiting a few people, like what you have read in the newspapers. But if it's done in the right way, first cushion people so that they can be able to have 3 meals in a day. Then from there come up with policies which govern and help businesses to thrive. Today, if you talk about the cottage industries in this country, it's too expensive. We are highly consuming nation. We are depending on importations. The other day we had issues with Kenya Revenue Authority by coming up with policies which are very abrupt. So there's no even credibility of how they went, how the process went. And you know, the constitution allows them to come and sit down with stakeholders and agree on some of these policies. So you find that you cannot have predictability of your businesses. So if, for example, you're importing things from China, today you are paying 2.5, the other day you're going to pay 5.5. So where is that predictability? So when you look at the government's policy on business, it must change. And it's a high time that Parliament takes its role by coming up with policies and listening to different stakeholders. Because
so you're talking about also the issue of priority.
The issue of priority.
Okay.
Because this is not an overnight thing. Let's not even try to think that's going to change in the near future. But first, let the government come up with policies that are going to mitigate and to assist and to cushion the Wanjiku.
All right.
Yeah.
Joseph, you've heard from, you know, some of the residents in Bungoma as well. They've really articulated the issues they feel is at the heart. You sit with people, you know, you chair the Bunge la Mwananchi, at least here, but when you sit down with the people of Nairobi and other parts, when you visit the other parts, and the Bunge la Mwananchi and other parts, what are the key main issues that is at the heart of their concerns?
Zainab, during the dawn of independence, our leaders then told us that we need to tackle 3 very important things if we want to develop. Ignorance, hunger, and disease. By ignorance, I believe they meant education, agriculture, food stability, disease, health. Now, 60 years down the line, we are still going on the streets demanding the very things that our founding fathers promised to tackle in 1963. Now, back to your question. The common man, as I interact and chair some of the meetings with the common man.
Right. We call them Wanjiku.
Wanjiku.
Yeah.
Wanjiku's concern, according to Wanjiku's priority list, you know, the problem is that most of these governments have been holding the priority list upside down. Wanjiku just wants the prices of basic commodities not to be cheap, but to be affordable. Affordability of school fees so that Wanjiku can take her child to school. And somehow better health care so that when Wanjiku is sick or the child is sick, with the minimum income that Wanjiku earns, she can at least afford health care.
So where do you think the challenge is? Where do you think the issue is? From independence up until now, we've been able, we've developed as a country, our democracy has developed. We can say we've seen a better infrastructure, we've seen all these things happen. But yes, we're still there talking about we need to lower the cost of living. We can't afford 2 meals, 3 meals a day, others not even 1 meal a day.
Yes. Now, I've just talked about the priority list being upside down.
Right.
What is the use of a country being developed in terms of infrastructure, very expensive roads, and yet its people are sleeping on an empty stomach?
So the same thing goes back to priority.
Priority.
Right.
Priority. If you look at the Daily Nation, people in the north cannot afford to have a basic commodity such as water, leave alone clean water, even dirty water.
Just water.
There's no even dirty water. Now, if at the end of the day, we even saw the need of bringing devolution so that we can at least bring services closer to Wanjiku, are we safe if we have a government or a county government that has been there for close to 12 years now and cannot even drill water, borehole water for its people? And if you go to those counties, you'll find out they are building very expensive roads. For who? For who? Who will pass on those roads if they cannot even afford drinking water? Let us put our priority list in the right manner and tackle basic needs of the Kenyan people first.
Right.
And this is where I sometimes watch our leaders on some of these talk shows. When somebody gives an example of, like in the United States, like in Canada, let us be realistic. Let us not, watch too much movies. Let us be realistic here. Let us have a solution for our own problems. You cannot go to Dubai and look at the way the infrastructure is. You want to come and implement it here, and yet your people are sleeping on an empty stomach. It cannot work.
Right.
At the moment, Zainab, the minimum wage, according to the Ministry of Labor, at least for the cities, that is Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu, and of late Nakuru, is at around 14,000 shillings.
That's the minimum wage.
For the minimum wage.
Right.
Now, if you look at the cost of living at the moment, by cost of living, I mean, the high cost of living, I mean, the income of Wanjiku cannot match the expenditure.
So you're going to talk about, you need to buy food.
Yes.
You need to pay the rent.
Yes.
You need to, and that's considering this is the most basic.
The most basic.
So
school
perhaps
fees.
you have school fees to pay if you have children.
Yes.
So there's a big issue.
There's a big issue.
All right. Yes, Bina.
Yeah, and you see, it also, when you look at all these stressors, then you draw the link to how they are connected to the high levels of gender-based violence and suicide that we are witnessing in this country, literally, because look at how the economy of this country is performing, the stress in the community, the frustrations, when you cannot afford basic commodities, when you have children depending on you who cannot even go to school, who cannot even have a meal a day, like literally, every other day we're running stories on TV when it comes to suicide, when it comes to people killing each other. Yet we know even when it comes to gender-based violence, most of the cases go unreported. Like they don't even make it to the newspaper, they don't even make it to being reported even at the police station. But if you look keenly, you'll see how these are also connected to the stress levels people have because of the economy that is not working for them.
All right. Before we continue, let's also hear from what residents of Mombasa County had to say with regard to their concerns and aspirations for a better country.
My name is Kevin Mutai from the port city of Mombasa, and these are some of the concerns residents feel should be addressed by the government.
Personally, mimi nilikuwa naonelea kwamba our current government should address the following issues. One, vijana tumesoma lakini kazi hatuna. Tulikuwa tunaomba serikali angalau ipate kutengeneza hata kama ni zile, hata kama ni kuchipi kitu kama hustler fund, at least ikuwe increased so that at least vijana tupate kujianzishia projects zetu tuweze kuendelea na maisha. And then two, wale ambao bado tutaendeleza na masomo yetu kishule, serikali kidogo ipate kutuangalia shukishe the school fees ambayo tunalipa.
Vile mambo yanavyoenda saa nyingine atufurahi sana, lakini sasa hatupendi kwenda barabarani ndio atuelewe. Tunaomba atuelewe tu kitaratibu. Hiyo ndio maoni yangu. Na angalie vile watoto wetu skuli vile wanavyopelekeshwa pia na walimu, kwa sababu pia nao walimu siku hizi nao hawaelewi, maisha imekuwa ngumu. Asubuhi ukienda watoto wanatolewa barabarani, nenda ukalete pesa, wewe mwenyewe huna pesa, wewe mwenyewe ni bangaiza, hujapata pesa, lakini mwalimu tayari ashafanya nini? Ashatoa ule mtoto skuli, anataka wewe uko na pesa ndio ule mtoto wako asome. Sasa hiyo pia naye rais wetu atuangalie pale. Maisha imekuwa mbaya.
Kitu ambacho ni priority sahi kwa wananchi, hata mimi kwa binafsi, ni hiyo cost of living. Bei ya unga iteremshwe, bei ya mafuta iteremke, bei ya pia fertilizer iteremke.
All right, and those are just some of the sentiments were sampled from the residents of Mombasa County. Sami, I was trying to get, but I didn't manage to pull it up, but I will when we do take a break. But I want to get your reaction to some of those sentiments. Now, yesterday we did receive a statement from the government on the state appointments to the rank of the Chief Administrative Secretary. So this happened yesterday, and it says, and I quote, "It is notified that the Speaker of the National Assembly has referred back to the appointing authority of the transmittal of the nominees for appointment to the rank of Chief Administrative Secretaries. The Speaker's memorandum note as follows, that the obligation to respect, uphold and defend the Constitution enjoins the House to refrain from assuming and discharging a role that has not been expressly assigned by the Constitution or written law. In that regard, the National Assembly is unable to vet the nominees in the absence of an express constitutional or statutory requirement to do so. As a consequence of the referral by the Speaker of the National Assembly, which has found that there is no constitutional or statutory basis upon which the August House can vet the nominees, the head of state and government has, the 22nd of March, caused the appointments of the nominees to the various ministries as earlier notified." Remember, it shocked the country quite a little bit when we saw the list of the CAS nominees, 15 number. That is almost twice of the CAS positions that were in the previous government. So when you're looking at this, first of all, these nominees will be, you know, in an already bloated government. Remember, the wage bill is already bloated, right? So then you have 50 new chief administrative secretaries, and they will not be nominated, and they will assume office effectively.
I think it's a very unfortunate situation that we are having, because we must have a lean government with the situations and the outcry of the Wanjiku. When you look at the timing of what happened and, you know, like in the appointment of the 50 CASs, I think it's ill-advised. And I think the president should be able to sit down again with the cabinet and his team to evaluate the situation. The reason why there's an uproar is because you're seeing a government that is expanding and a government that is crying there's no money.
Right.
So when you look at that, there is a confusion that is there, and there's something, and that confusion is also questioning the integrity of the government and the fidelity of the government to the Constitution.
Yeah.
So when you look at the utterances of the Deputy President on how the economy is and the acts or the actions that they are having in terms of the expenditures, it's really unfortunate. And so I believe that this country should be able to go in a different direction. Number one, what are our priorities? We do not really need a bloated government. We need a very lean government based on performance. And a leaner government and highly effective, civil servants is going to deliver the vision of this country,
right,
the vision of this government. You don't need to have a bloated government or so many people, to be able to deliver the vision. When you even now go down from the central government to the county governments, we also have so many ghost workers. Like what happened in Kisii, what our governor here is doing even in Nairobi, and it's the same thing that is happening. And I think, Zainab, one of the things which I usually say and we reflect in different shows, we say this: let us have leaders who are patriotic enough to lay down their lives for the betterment of this country. And you're not going to be in that seat forever.
So then who speaks for the Mwananchi?
Now, you see, now we have different groups that speaks for Mwananchi, and we have to speak for ourselves also. You see, like what's happening on the streets, people going to picket and and demonstration, and it should be. And I said earlier, it should be well guided. But the most unfortunate thing, I had an experience. I think in 2017, I had an experience of vying in Nairobi, and one of the things that Zainab I noted is that we are a highly ignorant society, whereby a good number of us, we do not know our right. And that's why the government and the politicians come and sway us. And that is why civic education is key, to make sure that the common Mwananchi, like what Bunge la Mwananchi they are doing, because they are enlightening people. And even with the performance and platforms like of social media, people are being enlightened. So we must speak for ourselves, because this chapter 1 of the Constitution talks about the sovereignty of this country is in Wanjiku. And so Wanjiku has given leaders a delegated authority to speak on their behalf. So if those leaders are not, coming or are not rising to the occasion, we have a right also to recall them and to make sure, if you are not speaking on our behalf, this is our demands, this is what we expect from you. If you cannot be able to do that, then we are going to recall you. And so Wanjiku should know the power that is in their hands to be able to do that. But having said that, we are a peaceful country, and we must make sure that all the processes that we have to pass through, they have to be constitutional processes, so that we cannot burn our country because of issues that can be discussed over the table and issues that can be tackled. And let me say this as I end.
Okay.
It is a high time that we have a very candid conversation of where we are at. The situation that we are in right now is a situation of leadership. Let's get leaders who can be able to come with policies and in consultation with the different groups, because we have groups which have given themselves to do that, and come up with policies that are going to have posterity of our leadership. Because as my brother Joseph is saying, we are almost 60 years and we're discussing the same things. There's something very wrong with that.
Something wrong.
Yes.
All right. We have to take a very quick break here on AM Live. In a short while, when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. I'll be able to just take one or at most two callers. You can call in live. When you come back, you'll see the number on your screen just to hear what are some of your biggest challenges as a Kenyan as you're watching this morning AM Live. We'll be back in a short while. I'm just leaving you with this statement. That's what we were talking about, the statement that was released yesterday by the State House spokesperson Hussein Mohammed on the Chief Administrative Secretary's state appointments. We'll be back. Stay with us.
This is The Greatest Show, an all-stars affair. One goal, one stage. The London Marathon, 23rd April, live on NTV.
God is always engaged in our affairs. He's engaged in your life. He's engaged in the life of our community. He's engaged in the life of our church. He's engaged in the life of our nation.
This week on The Best Of,
So we'll always be the first recycling company in Africa to have been B Corp certified.
we take another look at how you had your lunch.
Nairobi alone generates 650 tons a day of plastic waste.
Waste takes on unexpected forms.
Looks good, man. Looks good. Hey, thanks. Yeah, don't quit your day job yet. Just yet.
And we get our hands dirty to get our lands clean.
Our primary buyers are your zoos, aquariums, museum, gift shops all over the world.
On The Best of Waste Management.
Santon, a fun new world of flavor, fruity freshness in every sip.
With Glovo you have the city in your hands. Unatamani chakula different? Order Glovo ujaribu restaurant mpya. Diapers zimeisha? Order Glovo and save the day. Download the app and order anything you want.
All right, welcome back to the program. You're watching AM Live NTV. We are just having a look at the state of the nation and just taking a look at some of the issues that have been raised today. Joseph, let me get your view on this. So this is where we are at this point. This is the issue of the appointments of the chief administrative secretaries, politics aside. And, you know, there was a bit of an outcry when we saw the number and the list of the chief administrative secretary nominees. This is what we have right now. In fact, they will not be going to Parliament for any kind of vetting. And it says that the ascension of the chief administrative secretaries to office, the state appointees are now scheduled to subscribe to their solemn oath of office and they will begin work. We're talking about 50 CASs. But the government of the day, of course, says that the reason why they have this number of CASs is because they need to run a government, they need to run businesses. At some point, I think we had an argument that if a CS is not around, because a CS is running around the world because of policy issues, they needed someone to be there in the ministry because the PS is just, you know, an accounting officer.
Yes, Zainab, I'm looking at the appointments in two directions. One, the economic direction. I think appointing these 50 of these CSS at this time, this point in time, when economically we are down or badly off, was ill-timed. But on the other hand, politically and on service delivery, the government will argue that since we want a rapid response and quick service delivery to the people, we saw maybe a situation where if we have many people, many CSS assisting in ministries, then it will quicken the order of service delivery. Of which personally I don't have a problem with that. As long as, even if the government so wishes to put, even if it wants to appoint 1,000 CSS, as long as the Wanjiku on the ground feels that the government of the day has taken care of her need. In what sense? The three things that
you mentioned.
Yes, I mentioned earlier, since independence. The reason why we are still going on the streets. If they can, if the 50 PSS can promise that they are going to tackle those things, I will support even if they want to put 100.
And even on that, Dennis Nelson here on Twitter saying, look, this thing is generational. Our forefathers fought for a better future for their generations. Their future generations are fighting for a better future for the generations to come. Also, 60 years from now, the future will be on the streets, the future generation will be on the streets fighting for their future generations. Is it a cycle?
It's a diabolical cycle.
I wouldn't say it's a cycle. I'll just say it's, I think ignorance or being a real capitalist, because...
Do you see us still fighting for the same things 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? Are we still going to be fighting about we need better services, we need healthcare, we need water, just basic drinking water for a Kenyan somewhere in Marsabit or in Isiolo?
Yeah, I hope not. I wouldn't want my children to again go on the streets on the same thing that my grandfather went on the streets for, my father, and now I. What I'm looking at is if we are going to change our approach on the basic fundamental desires of the Kenyan person or Wanjiku, then we are going to change. But if it is the same thing, year in, year out, then I'm afraid we'll go with this thing for almost even 200 years from now. People will still remember Jomo Kenyatta saying the same things at the dawn of independence.
Okay.
200 years from now.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Bina, as we move forward, and we know we're just sort of trying to look at what the government, at least what we have, the government of the current administration right now, what do we need to do? What do we need to focus on? Where do we need to prioritize on? We're saying the priorities are a little bit different. Where do we begin to prioritize on, even as you make a comment on this?
First of all, I think the uproar is because, Kenyans also want to understand, so what are these gaps within this ministry that someone else is coming to fill in? So if you, the example, even the my panelist here was giving of one CAS saying that, like they're going to be succeeded by 7 other CAS in the same department, right? And this department is also under one ministry. So what are these extra gaps that all these individuals are actually coming to fill in, because perhaps the cabinet ministry, the CS, the PS need that extra help, right? So I think it's the questions Kenyans are asking, and against, of course, the backdrop of we inherited a country and an economy that is performing poorly. So then how do you actually want to remunerate these people if you're actually talking about an economy that is performing poorly? And Kenya collects revenue every other day, like literally. So you also cannot just say that you inherited an economy or a country and there was like zero resources in the coffers of this country, because we actually collect revenue every other day. So it's to look at how much are we collecting every other day. So that is on that particular issue on the CS on my end.
Okay. And only fair, because we have also residents from Eldoret, that's in Uasin Gishu County, also had some things to say. Let's hear from Gabriel Kudaka.
Many Kenyans have been complaining about the high cost of living, with some being unable to afford basic needs. We now join the residents of Uasin Gishu County to understand what their needs are. And ndugu, unaitwaje? Na kwanza wewe ni hustler?
Mimi hata siyasema mimi ni hustler, sababu unaona mwenyewe mimi ni hustler. Unajua hustler huwezi jisema, unajiona tu ni hustler. Mimi ningeomba president wetu, sababu mahasala ndo alisimama na yeye.
Sasa wewe kama hustler, mahitaji yako ni yapi haswa?
Mahitaji yangu pikipiki akiweka mafuta kwa lita 100. Unga irudi 70. Mimi sina shida na president. Hiyo ndio kitu yenye mahasala anataka. Hakuna siku hustler ataandikwa State House. Hatutafika State House, hatuwezi salimia Ruto. Labda mwenyewe aseme tu anataka kutuona, lakini hatuwezi mfikia. Kitu cha tungemwambia yeye asimame na mahasala bila alikuwa amesema, simama na mahasala tutakuwa. Kama sasa hii unaenda unabeba mtu ni 50. Mafuta ni 200. Ukienda trip ine hiyo mafuta dumeweka tu mafuta hata huna yako. Hiyo tunaomba president aache kuandika watu kama kina Kidero kazi. Ukiweka Kidero kazi, mtu amekuwa gava na miaka yote, alafu tunatarajia mahasala wakae namna gani? Afukuze huyu watu wenye walifukuzwa na wananchi, atoe kwa roho. Sisi arudishe mahasala kazi yenye alikuwa ameambia watu. Hata mtu wa bodaboda hapa akichukuliwa kwa minister, hiyo itakuwa raha.
Asante sana. Na je, ndugu, unaitwaje na wewe mahitaji yako ni yapi haswa ambayo ungependa labda serikali ishughulikie?
Mimi naitwa Pastor Ezekiel. Mimi ni mkaji wa hapa Eldoret miaka nyingi sana.
Mimi kitu yenye ningependa kuambia president ashukishe mafuta, na ile watu wenye alichukua kaajiri kwa serikali, hao watu wote walikuwa mafaila. Hao watu si watu wenye angepatia kazi.
Na wale watu, nazungumza wewe mwenyewe, mahitaji yako ni yapi? Wewe kibinafsi mahitaji yako ni yapi?
Mimi ninataka unga ishuke vile alituambia shilingi 70, alafu vitu zingine hizo zote ashukishe pamoja na mafuta. Akishafanya namna hiyo tutajua kwamba amejali sisi mahasala.
Asante sana. Na je, ndugu, unaitwaje na mahitaji yako ni yapi ambayo labda ungependa yashughulikiwe?
Yangu inaitwa Cosmas, na mahitaji yetu sisi sana watu kawa kwa dasalas ni unga ishuke, mafuta ishuke bei. Sasa akishukisha mbolea na already mahindi bado unga bado tunanunua 200. Maisha inaenda wapi?
Asante sana. Na mwingine pia kwa hapa, kaka ndugu, unaitwaje na wewe kama labda kama hasla ungependa washughulikie mahitaji gani?
Mimi kwa majina naitwa Enoch. Mimi ni mwana bodaboda hapa Eldoret, na hii maisha imetugonga kutugonga. Hata saizi tukiongea hivi maisha imepanda, bei ya petroli iko juu, unga ugali iko juu. This is a nation. We have to see hustling people. Tunataka tuone young people ruling us. Hakuna haja watuwekee watu wamezeeka. Ingawaje wanasemanga ati mzee akikaa chini anaona mbali kushinda sisi, lakini pia sisi vijana tuko sharp. Akili iko sharp na mawazo pia iko sharp. So tunaomba tuteremshie petroli. Mimi naweza imagine saizi naweza weka mafuta ya pikipiki 179 lita moja. Na lita moja ya mafuta ya pikipiki hauwezi compare na maziwa. Hiyo ni kidogo sana. Ni kama umepewa maziwa kikombe 2. Ukibeba customer saizi distance, customer analia, hana pesa. Pesa hakuna Kenya. Wanda pesa ilienda wapi? Hata ili warudishe zile noti za kitambo. Juu hii noti ya 1000 sasa tunaona ni kama ni iko na wenyewe. Zile siku ile ilikuwa mingi. Sasa hii hakuna, hata useme uokote shilingi 5 hauwezi.
Kwa hivyo wewe tu shida zako ama labda mahitaji yako ya muhimu sana ni yapi ambayo yapewe kipaumbele?
Kitu ya kwanza wa rectify hiyo maneno yenye wameweka wazee. Kitu ya pili watupunguzie mafuta na bei ya ugali.
Asante sana. Na je, dada unaitwaje na kwako wewe mahitaji yako ni yapi ambayo ni muhimu sana yanayostahili kushughulikiwa?
Okay, kwa majina naitwa Beatrice Anakoli. Mi kama Mkenya naweza urge Mr. President ya kwamba aweze kuzingatia mahitaji ya mwananchi wa kawaida. Vile alituambia hasola wataingia State House, tunaomba tu aweze kushukisha vitu chini. Like mimi napewa 300 kwa siku, na nikienda nao hata kama ni supermarket unapata kila siku vitu zinapanda. Hadi hiyo 300 unashindwa hata utaanza kubudget aje. Unapata unga ni bei kali, kila kitu ni bei kali, sukari ni bei kali, unashindwa utafanya nini. So Mr. President, mimi naweza kuurge tu the way ulisema hasola watashughulikiwa, try tu kushughulikia mahasola wapate needs zao.
Well, those are some of the views from residents of Uasin Gishu County regarding the high cost of living and what should be done to mitigate against the same. Back to you, I'm Gabriel Kudaka.
All right, thanks Gabriel Kudaka there in Eldoret town. Well, some would say this is hustlers halisi, all right? And this is the voice of Wanjiku out there, a young lady who talks about just earning 300 shillings in a day. That's the amount of money that this person is earning. Joseph, as we move forward, do you think our leaders across the political divide really understand the plight of Kenyans, the Wanjiku, the common Mwananchi, their struggles, you know? Or are we just using this issue of the cost of living to sort of whip up emotions, you know, for political, you know, agendas?
Zainab, our leaders don't understand the plight of Wanjiku. The reason why they don't understand is very clear. If you look at mostly the political leaders, if you look at what they are earning in terms of wages in parliament, as in the cabinet, some of them don't even know how much a loaf of bread costs. I remember there was a time the former president was asked, how much do you think a loaf of bread costs? And he said around 500 shillings. So, to be sincere, the leaders don't understand the hardship that is on the ground.
Right.
Do
you think they've over-politicized the conversation, over-saturated our conversations on politics?
Yes, if you remember, I started by saying the problem with the fight against the high cost of living is that politics has cropped in, and now politics has taken the leadership in this conversation about the high cost of living. And in Kenya, the moment politics crops in anything, the winner will always and must always be politics.
Right.
I gave an example. The political leaders that are championing the mass action against high cost of living, if today they're invited to State House or Harambee House,
will we have that conversation?
That is the day that conversation will die and be buried.
We saw that before.
We've seen that
happen before.
Yes, before.
Right.
Yes.
So how sincere is it right now? Right.
Thank you.
Let me hear, before I get you, Bina, Sami, so moving forward again, we do know that the opposition has called for mass protests at least twice a week, effective from next week, which is Monday and Thursday. Looking at perspective of, you also own a small business here in Nairobi, and you represent at least the plight of also small-scale traders, the people who are trying to make a living, here in the country, just nationally as well. What happens next for traders like yourselves? The issues are there on the table, but we're moving forward. This is where we are right now. What are your concerns?
Well, Zainab, we are not in support of the protest. We are not in support completely of the riots, because what we are looking for is a conducive business environment that we can be able to thrive. And I think the conversations can be directed in better ways. As Joseph is saying, and I can't agree with him more, we are having selfish leaders who are hijacking processes. We have had a conversation, we had conversations with the Deputy President last month, and I think also a better part of this month, and the conversation is continuing. Because what we are looking at posterity. We are looking at how we can have policies which govern us. Because you see, regimes come and regimes go.
But isn't it ironical that, yes, you say that the government is working towards trying to help traders like yourself and other small-scale traders, medium-sized enterprises as well, but this is where we are.
Not the government helping. Actually, we pushed for the meeting. It's not the government calling us. We initiated, because we saw the direction the government was going. And we actually initiated, we wrote a letter to the Deputy President, and we had meetings, even we had talks even with the CS of Trade, because we have to be very proactive. We are not waiting for the government to come and call us for meetings, because definitely they are not going to do so. So what we are looking at is what is a remedy that is going to, to go for generations. And there's a question that you asked, is it a generational thing? And I think that's a diabolical cycle that needs to be broken by the leadership and part of us who are in platforms that we can be able to influence change. Why? Because we are looking at things which must not be happening in the 21st century. So we are looking at policies, influencing of policies, so that when I exit my businesses in Nairobi and I retire, my son can be able to come and continue in a very conducive environment. And also what happens with policies and laws which govern. We also shut out greedy politicians who come on board to take advantage of businesses. Because right now we have policies which are very weak. We have also policies which are very archaic. And that is why when they see the lacuna in the law, they take advantage of that. And so we are looking at how we can be able to influence that. And having said that, as a business community, we want the government to first and foremost, and as I said earlier, and I think this is an emphasis, can you first come in and mitigate and cushion the situation as we continue the conversation?
Right.
And mitigating the situation is, can we live within our budget? Let's live with, it's like you earning maybe 50,000 shillings and spending 250,000 shillings every month. And your salary is 50,000 shillings. Now, what miracle will you do, you know, to be able to sustain your life? And that's what the government is doing. The government must be able to remain within what we are collecting. Get a lean government. Some of those things and projects which are not necessarily for this time, they're prioritizing them. We should make sure that those those policies or those projects hold. Let me give an example as I finish. When you're talking about, like, for example, he's talking about roads. Roads are very good infrastructure. They help us, you know, probably get agricultural goods from point A to point B.
Right.
But simple things as county government, digging boreholes. Simple things like digging boreholes. Making sure that there is water in some of those areas which are very hard hit.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the 21st century, Zainabu? We are relying on rain for food, when other countries like Israel and even so Dubai, they are even planting in the desert. So when you're looking at all this, there's a book that was written by Lee Kuan Yew, From Third World to First World. And I think we should have leaders who are selfless. They do not look for another term. They are not looking for another term to be re-elected.
Right.
They are looking for transformational change of their people.
Right.
And that is what we are lacking.
All right. Bina, as you make your final remarks and moving forward, by the way, I saw arguably more women in the protests on Monday as compared to, you know, when we see protests happening, it's usually men at the forefront of these things. But we saw more women on Monday. That was quite interesting. I don't know if you noted that as well. What does that mean?
I did, and I think it's interesting when we actually begin to see women, both young and old, start to attend protests, because it also brings to the fore the fact that in our communities, we see women and young people as the primary caregivers, even in our own homes, and that comes at a cost. When you look at even the impact of teenage pregnancies, it affects more young people, it affects more young women, right? When you look at the high cost of living, you know, most of our mothers are actually in chamas, in merry-go-rounds, so that they can be able to take care of the basic needs that we've been discussing since this particular conversation began, whether it's access to healthcare, whether it's access to water, whether it's access to education. Like, people are in arrears, and majority of those people in arrears are actually our women and our young women in the communities who are trying to sustain our families and redress most of these issues that the political class is actually not taking not taking care of. You know, Kenya is a very youthful country, Zainab, right? 70% of the Kenyan population is actually made up of young people, and the unemployment rate in this country stands at 65%. And you know, I was looking at research and data some time back that 3 out of the 5 people who are unemployed in this country is actually a young person. 3 out of 5. And then when you look at also, where also are these young people, even the ones who have these few jobs, where are they? They're in the informal sector that is hugely unregulated, and also it's subject to, you know, low-paying jobs. Look at the conditions that even young people have to go through when they're working in the informal sector that carries the bulk of the people, the young people in this country, whether they're educated or not educated. And we wonder why young people are looking at crime as a, you know, as a viable option in this particular country. So when it comes to solutions, for me, I'm thinking about how do we even formalize some of these informal enterprises? How do we even ensure that people have decent wages when it comes to the informal sector in this country? When it comes to devolution, a beautiful thing that has actually brought services back to the members, you know, at your county level. So how are even the governors in the different counties taking advantages of the opportunities within their own county to engage young people, to even upskill the people in their own counties? Because at the end of the day, yes, we are going to talk about the presidency because the buck stops with him at that particular level. But then when you go down to counties, you know, the opportunities in Nairobi are so different from the opportunities in Kakamega, in Murang'a. You know, if you look at even farming, let's say in Murang'a, you know, and even what they can do. If you look at even, you know, the coffee business, whether it's in Kiambu. So how are we in our own governments, right, in our own county governments, taking advantage of those opportunities. How are we growing revenue within our own, within our own counties, to be able to take care of the citizens within our own county, even as we discuss this broad leadership issues and bring and put the president at the center of it. So we need to actually begin to look at how can devolution work for all of us.
All right.
Yeah.
And that was the essence of the devolution as well, when we're centralizing power and decentralizing power.
And taking advantage of those opportunities and growing our people.
Right. So we want to wind up, but we just have maybe a minute or so. Sammy, just very quickly, your final remarks moving forward, and then we'll get Joseph also just very quickly, 30 seconds. We're moving forward. You're representing, all these people, in the informal sector, most of them?
Yes,
right.
So
you carry their aspirations today on TV to talk about their concerns.
The micro, small, medium enterprises is the backbone of this country. We account for 14 million micro, small, medium enterprises, our entrepreneurs. What we are looking for and what we are asking the government, let us not politicize issues. Let us make sure that we cushion this sector, because this sector is the backbone of this country. 98% of all the businesses in this country are within this sector. Let us be involved. Let us be in that negotiating table. And that negotiating table states that we take advantage of what God has given to us, human resource, and make sure that we have a conducive environment of doing business. We are trying, and we have decided to formalize the informal sector and making sure that we have been engraved in the constitution of this country and engraved in the economic policies that are being made by this government, so that we stop these conversations of protest and all this manner of things which do not add value even to our economy. We do not want to lose our livelihoods, and so the government should listen to us, and we must make sure that the moment they are called upon to make decisions, let them make decisions based on patriotism.
Right.
Thank you.
Joseph, you have the last word as we move forward.
Yeah, Zainab, my last words, I don't know if you've noticed, Kenyans are very hardworking people, very hardworking. And as my colleague has said, the government needs to take advantage of the human resource that the people of Kenya have. I don't know if you are aware that if you rank African countries based on development, we are, I think, top 5 or top 6.
Yes.
But all the other countries that are above us have minerals, meaning they are overshadowing us because of minerals. The reason why we are within top 5 in Africa is because of our human resource, nothing else. Our human resource. Let the government not disappoint Kenyans. Let the government put their priority list upright and not upside down.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vinay, you had something to mention as we wind up?
Yeah, just to mention that, Kenya is the dominant economy in the East African region, and it contributes 40% to the region's GDP. And we cannot thrive if we actually don't have peace and stability. And the peace and stability is going to be dependent in terms of how we're going to handle the current situation with, protests that are meant to take place every other Monday, and to see also how peace and stability is going to affect every other thing, not only businesses, but our ability to also take our kids to school. And, interestingly, for the middle class, people, like some of us will be working from home because, because we have that opportunity, But what about the people, the ones we saw there? They cannot, because they have to go to work every other day to make that 300. The Boda people that we're actually looking at just right now, how are they going to actually go to work? How are they going to do their businesses to even earn that 100 shillings we're talking about? So,
in fact, I remember on Monday there was a certain bite of an individual who said, you know what, I'd rather be in the demonstrations the whole day instead of going home and my kids asking me, Dad, where is the food?
Yes. You see, so people don't have an option to sit at home. People don't even have the gadgets we're talking about. You know, people don't have all these jobs we're talking about that allow you to actually Zoom from home. You know, you cannot be a boda and you're there considering, you know, working from home and all. It's not an option.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bina Maseno, Executive Director, Badili Africa, Sami Karanja, the CEO of MSME Alliance of Kenya, and Joseph Shitandi, who's the chair of the Bunge la Wananchi, for coming in this morning. And we were asking, politics aside, what does Wanjiku really want? Let me take a quick comment here. Quite interesting. Victor Akura saying, I like the way we've been able to strip away from the politics and take a Wanjiku-focused approach. The panel is very much on point. So we thank you for that. And this is where we finish. And talking of politics, calls for dialogue. This is where it stands. We have the KK demands, the Azimio demands, but that table is not aligned. Thank you for watching. My name is Zainab Ismail. Let's have this conversation again next week. Have yourself a good morning. Your world is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubende. Good day.
How do you keep your toilets clean?
I use normal detergent and bleach for washing.
The detergent and bleach cleanless can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus.
You took a lot, girl. Oh, we're good.
The recipe hit home.
We have to make sure that we just get you nice and refreshed. I love to serve my Coke with ice and sometimes a little bit of lemon as well, just to add that extra kick. Chapati is the recipe of the day that Susan Sharon wanted to learn how to make.
For this and more, join us this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. with me, Claire Karatu, only on NTV.
Coca-Cola pale kando. Hey, you're ready.
Pishi Bomba, in association with Coca-Cola.
Ice cold Coke, that's the recipe for magic. Make your mealtime more magical. Buy any participating pack. Check under the cap to get your code and stand a chance to win free food shopping for a year, plus millions in instant cash, airtime and shopping vouchers.
Do you know that picking up and reporting trade barriers can help us improve efficiency in shipping and freight logistics? Simply download the East Coast ShipLink app from the Google Play or App Store, report any incident and receive real-time support and assistance. Furthermore, the app provides a platform for truck drivers to report accidents, theft, impassable roads or any other issue that may prevent their cargo from moving smoothly along the transport corridor.
From a working nation to a vaccination, ni bad health ita overtax the nation. Pata chanjo COVID assassination, you truthfully jo ili harass the nation. Ukipata chanjo unanilinda pia, kujilinda ni kujisimamia. Lazima follow up na mabooster pia, sanitize maagizo zingatia.
Pata chanjo uwe chonjo, Kanairo tuko chonjo. Pata chanjo uwe chonjo, Kanairo tuko chonjo. Unisikie Bwana, unikaribie leo. Sala zangu zote naelekeza kwako we Mungu.
To get Sala Zangu by Ilagosa wa Ilagosa, dial star 812 star 832 hash. Skiza na Nation.
There's nobody here at this time, right? No, I really hope not. If they catch us with this in our bags, we'll be in a lot of trouble. You know, I really find this more exciting than cheating on Diego.